I had my COVID vaccine last week. And perhaps I'm not up to par because my immune system is busy learning how to battle COVID from the Pfizer vaccine. I've got all these people watching me. It's really kind of weird.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I've got the thing set up in what they call speaker view. Phone's ringing again. Incoming call. Just a second here. Hello? Hello? Yes, it is. I'm fine, but why are you calling me? Oh, yeah, I'm not old enough yet. I figure when I get old, I'll do that. Well, you wait for me to call you. Bye. Telephone solicitation. Not a lot of calls from people who want to sell me stuff. Or clean my ducks.
You have ducks? Do you have geese
too?
Well,
I don't know. This guy says, I'm cleaning ducks. This is a duck cleaning service. And I said, I don't have any ducks. I used to have a dog. Before that, I had a cat. Years ago, I had a bird. Never had a duck. They seem to think that everyone has ducks and they need cleaning.
What are you passionate about? Are you into music? Are you an aspiring composer? Where did your journey start? Who's been on that journey with you? What tools have you used to compose your music? This is Sharing Life. This is episode number 25. This episode is called Paul Whittaker, Colleague, Composer, Car Guy. In this episode, you are going to get to know Paul Whittaker. Paul is a really fun guy. I like being with him, and you will too.
So let's do it, Paul. It seems rare for people to follow or pursue their dreams. I've been enjoying your Dream Suite from 1999 most recently. Which of your CDs do you like most? Which ones do you get most feedback from?
I don't really get feedback about that particular one. I don't know that I produced any more than maybe 8 or 10 copies of each one of those. They were basically made as an archive. They were sort of fun to do. By the time I got to number 10, which I don't think I ever made, was that by that time CDs were a thing of the past, and that MP3 on the computer were probably a lot easier to make and just as viable.
So my next question is, how did your life change when you started composing? I understand that in 1999 you had more than 650 compositions, most of which were for piano solo and a wide range of instruments. So how long had you been on the journey of being a composer?
Well, my mother tells me I started when I was about 4. I don't remember composing anything at that time, but perhaps I did. I didn't really do too many until the time of the Korrie computer, which had software called Notator, which was developed in Germany for composing music on the computer and playing it back through a MIDI device, MIDI controller. That's how MIDI is, musical instrument digital interface. And that allowed me to start putting things together. I'm right at this point in time at probably around 2,300 pieces that I've written, most of them just had piano solos. It's just something that I do on a daily basis. And I don't think it changed my life when I started doing that, although I dropped my participation in amateur radio at the time that this Notator saw, because I could use that. I started spending a lot of time doing it. As a result, I dropped the amateur radio, which was an interesting hobby, but not as compelling. Several years later, all of that equipment was replaced by little musical sampling programs. So I can generate better sounds in my laptop than I can with all that equipment that's in that box. So I invested in a lot of technology that I didn't really.
Yeah, but that created a lot of momentum for your projects and for your life. That's a serious thing. And it's fun. And you got to share that and to grow in your skills. I think back to the days when, like, Johann Sebastian Bach had to get friends and whoever else to write out the score for him. That's so many skills that are needed. You can bypass just by pressing record and have it automated.
The software that I'm currently using was developed, I think, in the late 90s. My Atari died. I knew I had to get new software. I was looking at something that heard of it from composers, and it was quite complicated, had a very steep learning curve, and I was going to buy a copy of that and buy a new computer because the other one had died. I found out about Sibelius, and I asked the vendor which computer it worked in, and he said, well, it works in both Microsoft computers and Macintosh, but the Macintosh version is not as fully developed as the Microsoft Windows version. Very late 99, started using that for writing music and found it very, very easy to use, almost intuitive. Version 7.5, and I'm going to provide me with everything I need. I guess about 12 years ago, wrote an orchestral piece, and you just put all the parts down and press the play button, and it plays all of the sounds.
Yeah.
String sounds don't sound like that, not as good as piano sound, but you can simulate the music that you're writing, so you can hear it almost immediately. So what I do for composing, I have a computer by my acoustic piano, and I have a screen turned so that it is portrait rather than landscape. And I can input the music with the keyboard, not the piano keyboard, but the computer keyboard, which is on a drawer just underneath the piano keyboard. That's how I compose right now. Works quite well. And I can play it, hear it immediately, and then I can print it so any musician can read it. The technology has made writing an awful lot easier than it used to be. The way I wrote before would be very, very sloppy. I'd be fine for the first 10 or 15 minutes, and then my hand would get tired, and I'd end up with a scribble.
It's very tough transcribing all the music. What sort of compositions are you most into?
Well, I suppose you'd call it classical, romantic, late 1930s, 20th century kind of thing. Basically simple. I call them miniatures because they are really style of a sonata, which might be 25 or 30 minutes long, written by a classical composer, and I'll take the elements of the sonata and compress them down to maybe 4 or 5 minutes.
That's beautiful. I've heard your work and I've appreciated it.
Would you want to say a radio station?
Sure.
Oh, okay. I have a radio station right over there. You can't see it.
There's a high-frequency transceiver, which is about 32, 33 years old. Works perfectly. I haven't made that many contacts with it since I started using it. Started in January, and I think I've made about 4 contacts on the 40-meter band.
I've been enjoying your Dream Suite from 1999 most recently. Which of your CDs do you get most feedback on?
I don't really get feedback on the CDs. There's not that many of them. And it's been so many years since they were produced. I believe about 20 years since I produced a CD. The first one I did, I think, is called the Dream Suite. I can't remember.
I have it right here. I have the list. Whittaker, Dream Suite, KPW, CD 001. 99.
That's the first one I did. And I think that was probably more than 20 years ago. I think the most I got out of that was the fact that I was able to create a CD, put it together, do the artwork and all that sort of stuff. It was brand new technology, and discovering how the technology worked probably more exciting to me than the actual product. I think maybe I made about 10 or 12 copies and passed them out to some friends. I think it was Just 2 weeks ago, I received a weekly e-blast from the Canadian Music Centre. I'm not a member of the CMC. I get all of their publicity stuff, and there was a call for scores for the Toronto Symphony, and I submitted a score for a orchestral piece that I wrote in, I think, 2009. The deadline is today. I haven't heard anything back yet, of course, because it'll be another 2 weeks. It's a call for scores for a orchestral reading during a rehearsal and consultations with staff composers, Toronto Symphony. So that's one thing I've done. The other thing is one of the musicians of the Toronto Symphony asked me last year if I'd be interested in writing a string quartet. I got the string quartet finished, but by then COVID had come in, so he hasn't played it. Although I did hear it just before the played by an amateur string quartet. They're very good players. It was well received. I'm looking forward to that being played professionally. Both of those things being played professionally and perhaps broadcast.
That sounds like it would be a really special event.
The process of writing is more important, I think. It's the journey rather than the destination. I think that's always more satisfactory.
So you're telling me your life didn't change a lot when you started composing. You are saying that being involved in these projects was an exploration. This is how I view my podcasting, my radio show. How have the acquiring of your dreams of publishing CDs affected you?
I don't think it affected me in any way. I don't consider there was any effect other than I learned how to do it. I think part of the problem is that as you try and put something together like that, is your expectations are unrealistic. And so you think you're going to be able to do an awful lot with something, and you find that you're basically falling on your face. You just pick up and start all over again. But that's one thing I learned. The process itself is perhaps the reward. It's just another way of saying what I just said a couple of minutes ago.
So I understand that your mother taught you to play the piano at a young age. What was that like?
This is what happened, and so I expected that. Everyone had this happen. And I went into some friends' houses and I found that there was a piano, and I was very, very confused by that. Why would somebody have a house without a piano? I didn't know anything else.
I hear you. Do you now play some of your mother's favorite songs?
Oh yeah, the pieces of music that she played became pieces of music that she taught me and that I learned and have enjoyed over the years. There's some of the Mozart sonatas, about 20-25 minutes in duration. I've committed them to memory and still play them even after leaving them for a long time. You have a sort of a memory, finger memory, you know what's going to come next. And because it was classical and romantic music that I learned even before I started playing the piano, that's what stayed with me over the years.
Do you have more that you would like to accomplish musically at this point?
At this point in time, I've got perhaps a little over 2,000 pieces, almost all of them piano pieces. There's a few trios, quartets, duos, a couple of orchestral pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 2 pieces that I've submitted to the Phrygian library, and perhaps getting music there so that it is available for others to use is a goal that I have right now. And that is really not so much a musical goal. It is a goal just to have it put somewhere, passed on. Because if I don't do that, when I'm gone, it'll be gone.
Yeah.
And whether it's important or not, I don't know. It's hard for me to assess. Some things I've played for people and I thought, oh, that's really nice. And I think that's a piece of crap.
Yeah. It seems, let's say, to be a form of humility to make a joke about oneself. I think with the advent of these internet music services, what I wonder is, Is it possible for a person to upload his music to a distribution service, and then it can be played on Google Music, on Spotify, on iTunes, and then say your music was played 10 times today, it could pay for the subscriptions that have commercials or the different...
I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to be part of that. All that does is make music a commodity. And that's one of the problems with the way things work today. And I don't support it. I'm not writing music to try and make money.
I thought that was really important. You said, I'm not interested in art as a commodity.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the problem is with these models that they've built where music is streamed and ads are put in is something that I don't support. What it does is it diminishes the importance of the music.
Yeah, so it seems like antique cars have been a passion of yours.
Oh, yeah. It basically started out with the invasion of the British sports car after World War II. The MG, TC, the TD, the Jaguar XK120. I was enthralled by these things, and I started reading car magazines, talking to other people, friends who were interested in the same thing. Also got interested in pre-war cars, and I had a few interesting cars when I was a young fellow, and then nothing really interesting until I bought a full Bugatti. Well, I guess it was last 94. Currently, I drive a Miata, a Mazda sports car, little two-seater, and I have a lot of fun with that. Going on tours where you drive around. A friend of mine bought a car that his family had, bought a 1930 Franklin. His father had a 1929 Franklin. His brother had a 29 Franklin, and he and his another brother had one that they shared. But about maybe 10, 11 years ago, he bought a 1930 Franklin. I think you know this fellow's name is Alan Shantz.
Right.
He was one of the people that went with us in 2000. That was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember those days. What type of work did you do on your cars?
I did a lot of engineering on the Bugatti. Changed the wheels from Model A Ford wheels to knockoffs. Basically what I did was I engineered changes and then commissioned people to do the work for me. The only real work I did in the car was oil change. I think I put in an electro-pneumatic air horn. In fact, I put one in both Bugatti and the Miata. All the other changes I've made have been as a result of research and it's getting someone to do the work for me.
Yeah.
The Miata has a lot of changes, so that now instead of 140 horsepower, develops 220, which sort of brings it into the sphere of Porsche Boxster. It's quite fast.
Yeah.
I've improved the suspension by just lightening wheels. I've stiffened the chassis.
I did read over your article on the Miata. It's quite impressive, all the things that you did with it. And, you know, can you guess what my two favorite upgrades to the Miata was?
What's that?
It's something to do with a Swiss watch. You put a Swiss watch.
Oh, yeah. The Swatch.
On your dashboard, and that horn. That was a fun touch.
So how about while you're doing that, why don't I ask you a question? So we talked about the cars a little bit, and it's really cool, all the stuff you did with the cars. And you've also done some writing. Can you tell me about the writing that you've done for your car club?
Well, I wrote a book. It's called The First 25 Years. And basically what it is a history of the club from reading the Miata Miles, which is the monthly magazine, going back to 91 when the club started. A friend of mine, it's the same age as I am, joined the club. In fact, he's the only member that's still with the club that was at the very first meeting.
Ooh. He's
been around for a while. So what I did is I went through a lot of these magazines and put together a book and sold about 30 copies. Nice book too.
When were you involved in radio, and did you spend a lot of time writing to prepare for your airtime?
No, I was on the commercial radio one night, CFMX. I hosted a program called Sounds Great. But the amateur radio that I was involved in for a number of years is something you have to prepare first of all just to get a license. That takes learning how radio works, how radio waves work, all the technology, learning Morse code, both sending and receiving, and being tested and getting 100%. But preparing to be on the air is just a matter of turning it on and finding a clear spot that isn't being used. It depends on propagation patterns and all that sort of stuff. And you'll maybe hear someone call CQ, 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 which means I'm looking for someone to talk to. And you talk back to them and you tell them what your weather's like, where you are, what kind of equipment you're using, and all that sort of stuff. So I talk to people all over the world on amateur radio. I think I was able to talk to a fellow, I was able to talk to a fellow in Australia for about 20 minutes using about 40 to 50 watts of power. That's pretty amazing. All the way around the world on high frequency. The kind of radio you're talking about basically is commercial radio or broadcasting. And what this is amateur radio. There's a lot of aspects to it. It's very, very interesting. Can be very complicated. But right now I have a transceiver, and you can see it over there just by the door, and it's called a high frequency transceiver, and it covers about 15 different amateur radio bands from just above the AM broadcast band right up to 30 megahertz. Conditions aren't all that good now, and it depends on sunspot activity. It, like everything else, goes in cycles. So when I was active back in the mid-70s, you could talk to people around the world with hardly any power at all, and a very, very simple antenna. Now, there's a lot of noise, and propagation is not very good. I talked to somebody maybe in Wisconsin, or perhaps New Hampshire, Vermont, or something like that. And that's about all I can do right now with the conditions the way they are. Another.
So here's the last question for you. It goes, I understood that you received an award from Mayor McCallion for your service in the Mississauga train derailment of 1979, also known as the Mississauga Miracle.
Yeah. That was back in the days when I was active in amateur radio. There was an organization called ARES, or Amateur Radio Emergency Services. I gotta sort of imagine, this is a time before cell phones. A lot of people don't realize that phones that you could carry around in your pocket didn't always exist. But there was a time when people didn't have portable telephones. And the only way communications could be done was either with people running with notes back and forth, driving back and forth, or with radio. Amateurs had radio equipment and they could use it. So what we did is we provided communications between centers where people could go, and the Red Cross was working. We were working actually basically for the Red Cross. The Red Cross would keep a list of names of people and their addresses, and so that family members could find them. Somebody might be at a mall when things started shutting down, and they would be taken to a particular center, and they wouldn't know where their children are, so they had to try and find the children. So this is what we did. We provided communication for Red Cross. And I started out on Sunday afternoon, and I think I worked for about 23 hours. And then I was able to have about 2 hours sleep, and then I got up and did some more. There was a number of us doing that, and I think I finally got back to work on the following Thursday, and I lasted about a half an hour, and then I went to sleep. I was really tired. Well, I got a nice little note from the mayor, who's I think over 100 now. She's no longer the mayor. She quit when she was about 90.
Awesome, Paul. You have a great day, huh?
You too. Bye for now.
Bye.